Lent is a season of prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. And every Sunday we focus on a different theme. Last Sunday we talked about prayer. Today we are focusing on fasting. And fasting is a form of penance. It's a form of abstinence. However, it should never be an end in itself. It's kind of like training for sports. We train for a reason, but not for training itself. Fasting is extremely powerful, both physically and spiritually. Physically, fasting clears our minds, refreshes our bodies, and promotes longevity. Spiritually, the benefits of fasting are infinite. For when we fast from food, we build an internal fortitude that helps us to overcome toxins in our lives, such as pride, unforgiveness, gossip, anger, and destructive words. However, on a more subtle level, fasting helps us to not get stuck in the present moment, even if it is good or pleasurable. Have you ever met someone who was stuck in the past, in middle age, and still talking about high school? People for whom the good old days were the only good? And unfortunately, they miss what God is doing in the present. They miss the hope of the future. They miss the bigger picture. And so the good news of Lent and fasting is that we have a means to get unstuck, as all of us are stuck in different ways. My brothers and sisters, there's a reason why Lent ends in Easter. And this is why we empty ourselves to be filled with Jesus. For when we walk with Jesus, it makes us able to fully appreciate the present moment while always keeping our eyes fixed on resurrection and Easter. I invite you to turn to the person next to you and say, "Today is great, but there is more to the picture." Go ahead. Today is great, but Lent reminds us that there is much more to the picture. We see this in our reading today from Genesis, where Abraham is leaving a great life in Haran after the Lord gave him a glimpse of the bigger picture. We hear, "The Lord said to Abraham, 'Go forth from the land of your kinfolk and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and all communities of the earth shall find blessings in you.'" Abraham is a great example of how moving forward with God always leads to unimaginable blessings in this world and also in eternity. For Jesus Christ himself came from Abraham's bloodline. In the gospel today, we see Jesus invite Peter, James, and John to the top of the mountain, where the disciples have the greatest experience of their entire lives, only to find that this was only a small part of a much bigger picture. As we just heard, the disciples witnessed Jesus in a transfigured state. He was luminous. His face was luminous, his garments were, and he was flanked by Moses and Elijah, and they were conversing. It was such an incredible vision that they had that Peter wanted to make this moment last forever. He immediately said, "Lord, let us pitch tents, one for you, one for Elijah, and one for Moses." He wanted to make this passing moment, because it was so great, last forever. But even while he was still talking, a bright cloud came over them and cast a shadow over them, and they heard the words, "This is my beloved Son, listen to him." And suddenly they found themselves coming down from this peak experience, coming down from the mountain with Jesus, and Jesus simply telling them, don't talk about this experience with anyone until after I have risen from the dead. And this is because they wanted to pitch tents up there without even having an understanding of what was going on. It was part of a bigger picture. They would not understand the transfiguration until after the resurrection. Only after the resurrection would it begin to make sense, because that luminous form of Jesus that they saw was a glimpse of the risen Lord. And so, my brothers and sisters, today's Eucharist, Lent, and fasting invites us to not get stuck, to not pitch tents in the passing moment, but instead to be filled with Jesus, to walk with Jesus, and to know that although today is great, there is much more to the picture in terms of resurrection, Easter, and untold blessings.